Before we get started, I should probably clarify what exactly I mean when I say Sonic 3. The game titled Sonic 3 was released with a marketing blitz dubbed Hedgehog Day, February 2nd, 1994. It featured 6 zones, a new special stage, an added bonus stage, and 2 playable characters, Sonic and Tails. The Genesis had just become my first gaming console, and I picked up Sonic 3 over the summer. A few months later, I remember seeing an in-store ad for another new Sonic game. That black background, that awesome stylized logo. I couldn't wait, and for the first time in my life, I was counting down the days. Now this really is a particularly special game for me, because it was the first game I ever got on the day it released. Well, to be more technical, the day before. My mom found it for sale at a Kmart on the 17th. I guess breaking the street date wasn't as big a deal back then. But officially released on October 18th, 1994, was Sonic & Knuckles. It featured 6 full zones, a special epilogue zone, 2 new bonus stages, and a suspiciously similar special stage. It also had 2 playable characters. Can you guess who they were? The cart was really oddly shaped, and it had this flip top that revealed... Well, at age 6 I had no idea what this was. My first guess was that Sonic & Knuckles was such a tremendously advanced game that it required a cooling vent. Thankfully, my dad was there to read the instruction manual, because this is actually a cartridge port. You know, a lot of Sonic & Knuckles was suspiciously similar to Sonic 3. Same engine, same character sprites, same art style, same special stages. What happened here? You see, Sonic & Knuckles is literally the second half of Sonic 3. The development team intended for this to be one single game. With deadlines looming, they didn't want to leave a massive amount of content on the cutting room floor, which had happened with Sonic 2's development. So they decided to release what they already had done as Sonic 3. Continue development on the rest of the product, and very cleverly program the 2 cartridges to utilize the lock-on technology, creating a single gargantuan game called Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Of course, this meant that Sonic fans would have to buy 2 $50 games within a few months of each other to get the full experience. Lest anyone accuse Sega of double dipping, let me elucidate on why this was ultimately a good thing. The combined Sonic 3 and Knuckles was 34 megs. Cartridge memory wasn't cheap back in the day, and if this had been a single release, it might have been significantly more expensive than your average cart. But worse yet, I kind of fear Sonic Team might have scaled back on the scope of the adventure if they were trying to keep costs lower, resulting in an inferior end product. Sonic & Knuckles also allowed the team to put in a really cool value add. Locking on Sonic 2 would let you play as Knuckles in that game, complete with his signature abilities. It's all the more impressive given that Sonic 2 wasn't even designed to work with lock-on. Sonic 1 unfortunately did not do that, because just think of what terrible things would have befallen the world if Knuckles had accidentally glided into a conveyor belt. No, instead, Sonic 1 would let you access, no joke, 134,217,728 special stages in a game that came to be called Blue Sphere. It wasn't nearly as awesome as Knuckles in Sonic 2, but it was still a cool concept. But what we're here to talk about today is the full, complete version of Sonic 3 as intended by the developers. So let's get into it. Sonic 3 picks up days after the conclusion of Sonic 2, as Sonic and Tails infiltrate Angel Island, a mysterious floating landmass. Eggman's death egg crash-landed here following the events of Sonic 2, causing the island to plow into the sea. Eggman survived the landing and happened upon Angel Island's sole inhabitant, guardian of the island, guardian of the Master Emerald, and the most gullible badass you've ever seen, Knuckles the Echidna. Eggman warns Knuckles that Sonic is after the power of the Chaos Emeralds. He tricks him into believing that Sonic is the evil conqueror, all the while preparing to steal the Master Emerald and use its power to resurrect the Death Egg. So why am I bothering with story all of a sudden? Because Sonic 3 actually puts a lot more focus on story than its predecessors. Sonic 1 was, Eggman captured the animals, stop him! Sonic 2 was, Eggman captured the animals, also Tails is here, stop him again! Sonic 3 weaved its story throughout the game in a way that's pretty unusual for a platformer, even today. Like I said, Knuckles is the guardian of his island, and he considers you trespassers. He pops up throughout the game and drops bridges and diverts your path. He's always one step ahead, always screwing you up, always cackling like an idiot. This rivalry always feels like it has consequences on the gameplay. Eventually, Sonic and Knuckles sort out their differences in Hidden Palace Zone, but Eggman uses their fight as an opportunity to steal the Master Emerald. Knuckles finally realizes that he's been duped, and he takes Sonic to Sky Sanctuary. From there, Sonic boards the Death Egg, chases Eggman into orbit, and recovers the Master Emerald. Even beyond the story sections, the whole experience just feels so connected. The end of Act 1 is the beginning of Act 2. The end of one zone leads directly to the next. These quick, silent cutscenes give Sonic 3 a sense of scale and even atmosphere, without ever bogging down the gameplay. Angel Island feels like a pretty logical place, much more so than previous titles. Of course, what conveys scale even better is the pure, borderline ridiculous size of these levels. I mean, just look at this map! This is one act of a single zone. Now I know, I complained before that Sonic CD zones were overly complex and confusing, and that stages like Metropolis were just too long, but I won't be making similar complaints here, and the difference is all in the level design.
Hey, come on!
Sonic the Hedgehog 3 has, bar none, the best level design I have ever seen in a video game. The worst of Sonic CD's zones felt almost random in their design, and even the good ones could be a chore to navigate. But Sonic 3's complexity is cohesive. Just as the story weaves through the game, the insane amount of pathways weave through one another, branching in and out and using well-placed enemies and springs to keep you from getting lost. Sonic 3 still rewards skill with speed, but it also rewards exploration in a much more direct and gratifying way. Ever since the first game, it had been an optional goal to collect Chaos Emeralds by going through special stages. But before, you could never even get into a special stage without 50 rings. This meant that exploring unfamiliar territory was a dangerous and even frustrating experience, as you would have to tiptoe through the level, or risk taking a hit and losing that chance. That's not fun. Rings do still reward you here, because in Sonic 3, having 20 or more rings gives you the opportunity to hop into bonus stages, where you can gain shields and more rings. They're fun, but there aren't any permanent consequences. No, this time every zone is absolutely teeming with secrets and shortcuts, and getting into the special stage is now an instant reward for seeking out one particular secret, a giant ring. They show up regardless of how many rings you have, meaning the reward for exploration is a direct one. And these things aren't scarce. There are 77 of them hidden throughout the game, giving you ample opportunity to collect the 14 emeralds. 14? Oh yes. That's a happy consequence of these being two games combined. You can still collect the 7 Chaos Emeralds to give Sonic the ability to go super, but once you reach the Sonic and Knuckles zones, the next Transporter Ring will upgrade the Chaos Emeralds into Super Emeralds. You then play through the Sonic and Knuckles special stages to activate each of them. When you do, the Master Emerald itself is restored to full power, and Sonic can become Hypersonic. Combine all of this with a fully implemented save system that lets you select your zone after you complete the game, and replayability is more incentivizing than ever. It's essentially a new game plus. For the first time, it feels legitimately worthwhile to collect the emeralds, even if you're just doing a quick playthrough, because for the first time, you'll get to keep them when you turn off the power. I haven't said much about Supersonic yet, so now seems like the ideal time. Supersonic accelerates faster, hits a higher top speed, and jumps much higher than normal. He's also completely invincible to anything besides getting crushed or falling. Logically, the game is much easier once you have him, but I always appreciated that he wasn't just a boring win button. You still had to get 50 rings to make the transformation, and those rings tick down over time. Plus, his airspeed is so high that it's easy to careen out of control, unless you have a good handle on the level layout and physics. You still have to be skillful to take full advantage of his abilities, and I think that's why he's seen as such a beloved and integral part of the classic series. Now, Hypersonic? Freaking awesome! He takes the whole concept up to 11. In addition to a seizure-inducing palette and a wider invincibility aura, Hypersonic also has a flash strike that, combined with sufficient skill mastery, opens up all kinds of awesome tricks throughout the game. It's really too bad he never made another appearance. Now let's talk about one of Sonic's strengths compared to other platformers. Other games might have been significantly longer, but they achieved that length by reusing assets. Nothing wrong with that, by the way, but Sonic, right from the beginning, set itself apart by making each zone completely distinct. Unique music, unique art, even unique enemies and gimmicks. But even so, what really separated Emerald Hill Act 1 from Emerald Hill Act 2? Only the layout was really different. But Sonic 3 is this strength taken to the extreme. Act 1 and 2 each use unique but similar music, and the art and tropes also tend to change. Individual acts can feel completely different from one another, making each one a memorable experience on its own. The game is always throwing something new at you, and it never bogs down into repetition. This distinction between acts is aided by the fact that Act 1 now ends with its own mini-boss, while Act 2 sees you taking down Eggman. Now, one more thing about the level design. It takes advantage of 3 unique characters, and that's because each playable character is distinct. You see, back in the summer of '94, I kept running into these blocked-off areas that I couldn't figure out how to reach. Knuckles makes his debut, and when he's not cackling at you, he's the one who can break through those walls. I don't know if it's an experience you can really replicate now. I can't put into words how awesome it was to finally find out what was beyond those walls after months of wondering. If you're playing as Knuckles, you're basically playing the game in hard mode. The bosses he fights will be tougher, and he has plenty of alternate paths that take advantage of his unique abilities. He glides through the air and can climb up walls, and can burrow through breakable barriers without spinning. Sometimes an entire act will be almost completely different for him. His story does end a few zones earlier, but you're missing out on a lot if you ignore him. Tails makes his return. He can finally fly under the player's control, and he's learned to swim as well. For the most part, that means that Tails is the game's easy mode. Flight can let you pass over some challenges and even save you from falling. He also has a few paths and bonuses that only he can reach. But more importantly, I think Tails lends himself really well to exploring these sprawling levels. When I want to seek out new secrets, I go for Tails. And what about Sonic? In a game this awesome, the main character surely has something amazing, right? I bet he's faster, isn't he? No? Oh, okay, well, does he have the super peel out? Huh. Well, what does he have? That's it? The Insta-Shield? Tails can fly, Knuckles is just a badass, and Sonic has this dinky little burst that barely even does anything? Ah, but looks can be deceiving, my friends. The Insta-Shield ironically doesn't look flashy, but it is just as useful and just as fun as the spin dash itself. With perfect timing, you can hit enemies you wouldn't otherwise hit, protect yourself from hazards, and just pull off some really cool tricks. The game is designed around it, and remember, greatness in a Sonic game always comes down to skill mastery. Sonic is also the only one who can take full advantage of the 3 shield types introduced here. The shield would always let you soak up a hit without losing rings, but that functionality is vastly expanded. Each shield is elemental, and depending on which one you have, you'll be protected from the equivalent hazard. The water shield lets Sonic drop quickly and bounce, but more importantly, it allows you to breathe underwater, which is an absolute godsend. The flame shield means you leap right through rocket exhaust and walk on lava unscathed, and it lets Sonic shoot forward with a mid-air fireball spin dash. The lightning shield attracts rings toward you and gives Sonic the ability to double jump. Once again, this game is all about variety. Everything about it screams creativity, from a team that had worked out the kinks of their design and become experienced and sure of themselves. And make no mistake, Sonic Team was absolutely firing on all cylinders. Where Sonic 1 had an abundance of slow-paced levels, and Sonic 2 put too much focus on speed, Sonic 3 perfects the formula. Where Sonic 2 lacked an interesting exploration game, and Sonic CD would punish you for trying to move too quickly, Sonic 3 perfects the formula. There's a reason so many people claim this is their favorite in the series, and I count myself in those ranks. It closes the gap between speed and exploration, but it doesn't just strike a balance between these styles. It intertwines them and expands on every aspect of everything all at once. And it pulls all this off, well, perfectly. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is the best game of all time. No, that won't be necessary. I was already being objective. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is the best game of all time. But alright, of course, calling anything the best game of all time is itself subjective. I'm not pretending like it's literally perfect. Pushing the boundaries of the engine like this did lead to some glitches, or as the US instruction book called them, Robotnik's diabolical traps. Two-player split screen could not handle such complex zones, and in spite of some great music, that mode is treated as an afterthought compared to the full-fledged levels featured in Sonic 2. Also, it's so easy to take down Knuckles after an entire game of him taunting you that it feels a little anticlimactic. This barrel in Carnival Night, I am convinced, was only put here to bring in revenue to the Sega Tips hotline in the days before the internet. And it worked, I mean, I had to call it. But these are ultimately nitpicks, when you take everything else into consideration. How can you argue that Sonic 3 doesn't at least deserve to be in the conversation when we're talking about the greatest games ever made? How do you improve on it even more? Well, I would implore you to check out a fan hack called Sonic 3 Complete. It opens up a whole suite of customization options for the game and implements a ton of awesome features and bug fixes. It's been in development for years, it's amazingly professional and well done, and it has become my de facto method of playing. And I'm not just plugging it because my name is in the credits, but thank you too, Toes. I guess when it's all said and done, Sonic 3 will always at the very least be my favorite video game. The back of the box calls it a 34 meg Sonic epic. Now that word epic gets tossed around a lot to describe things that are merely impressive, but the formal definition is heroic or grand in scale or character. An epic is ambitious, an epic is monumental, and make no mistake, an epic is Sonic the Hedgehog 3.